What happens when you treat the natural world as your teacher? I went to the forest to find out, and here's what I learned through painting.
Just arrived in Innsbruck in Austria, and I'm just starting a hike through the forest, looking for a spot to paint. Just going to flip the camera. And so far it's really nice because you get these moments where the wind is passing through the trees, and obviously it's the start of autumn. So you're getting a load of leaves falling off, going into my path. It's really nice. So I'm just getting gradually deeper into the forest now. It's a little way up. I think it's about a 30-minute walk to the next point I want to go. Just show you the colours behind me. You can see a little bit. The autumn colours. Really stunning. I mean, literally I could set up an easel anywhere around here, and in any direction it'd be good to paint, so it won't be a problem finding, more of choosing. Now this could also be a really nice place to paint. This is a really nice view here, but I think I'm going to go a bit further up the hill and see what's up there. I'm thinking more of a forest scene again this time. This is inside the chapel. I'm completely alone. It's a very small one of the smallest I've ever walked into, actually. And this is the chapel from the outside. There are a few people here a few moments ago. I think they've just disappeared into the forest. Here's another beautiful view through the trees. This actually reminds me of New Zealand when I lived there, Queenstown in particular. So I've just got up towards a very nice viewpoint in Innsbruck, and you can see in the background gorgeous landscape. Does remind me of Queenstown in New Zealand. Really nice. So many places and options to paint. I like this view here, the mountains and the trees. We shall see. I'm just going to show you behind me the beautiful, stunning views of this nature. It's like unbelievable. I'm just going to move the camera. Not sure if you can see that, but there's a mountain in the distance. Looks unbelievable. The lighting is so nice. Air is so fresh. So many amazing potential spots you can paint in.
Sometimes the hardest part isn't finding a place to paint. It's in choosing one when everywhere is calling you. I let the forest choose me.
Hello again. So yesterday I was making these videos of all of the beautiful potentialities of me being able to stop and paint in so many different places. In the end, I only took a lot of photos and videos. I didn't get to actually paint. So I've come back today. It has been raining most of the day, but right now it's a very light rain, and I'm thinking to find somewhere in the forest to paint some trees. I'm going to go back up the route I came down yesterday, not too far up, and see what I can find. So far I've been walking for at least 20 minutes and I haven't seen a single other person. It's only very light rain, but what I have seen is 2 deers cross my path not very long ago. I think they knew I was there, but they didn't mind. They just quickly hurried across the path off into the forest. So I've just discovered a look into a forest. It looks like it's got like a miniature pond created by the rain. But I'm going to flip the camera now and show you. It's quite a dark look with the trees, but I like it. This is it here. I'm going to keep walking up a little bit further, but God, I like this. So I'm now looking at this scene of the luscious greens and the dark of the forest with the light hitting the trees in the foreground. I really like this. I think this could be a nice sketch. I've only got about an hour, so if I'm going to do this, to crack on. I've discovered these little mushrooms just below the trees. I don't think many people have walked here. That looks like an animal's eaten it because it hasn't broken off anywhere. It's not on the ground. And that's my view. This is my painting spot. I'm completely alone here. I haven't seen anybody. Just me and nature.
This is the spot I finally chose. Not because it was the most dramatic, but because it felt still, like it was waiting for me. Light filtered softly through the trees onto this little trunk that looked framed by the other small trunks leading up to it, and the trees leading up either side. And I knew I wanted to capture the subtle rhythm, the vertical push of the trunks against the shifting green of the canopy, and the dark background of the mysterious forest. I started with a light coloured pencil sketch, keeping it loose. No need to over-define, just a sketch to decide on the composition, then straight into a transparent wash, letting the water do what it does best. Blend, flow, surprise. I've learned from painting on plein air, in watercolour and gouache on my travels, not to fight the medium, but to work with it. Let your first washes be about atmosphere, not detail. I worked from background to foreground, big shapes first, then slowly carving light out of shadow with gouache. As the light began to fade and the first drops of rain touched the page, I knew it was time to stop. The painting wasn't finished, but it had captured something, a feeling, a rhythm. So I packed it away and carried it home, back to my studio in Brighton, England, where I could let it breathe and bring the final details to life. When painting out in nature, and especially when painting trees, I squint often. It helps me see, value relationships, and avoid getting lost in every branch. What's important here isn't realism, it's the feeling of being in this place. The hush, the light, the coolness of the air. And I had to capture that feeling before the light faded. I kept asking myself, where does the eye need to rest? Where does it want to travel to? What's this painting about? That's what guides my brush more than any rule. This moment, this act of painting in the forest and the abundance of scenery remind me why I do this. Not just to create art, but to connect with the world through it. I remember as I stepped into this forest, instantly I could see so many places and things that I could paint in almost every single direction, as I think I mentioned earlier in this video. I could have painted exactly what was in front of me. I was spoiled for choice. There was something to study absolutely everywhere. And this is one of the amazing things about taking your paints out into nature, being alone and still with it, and just going for it. Choosing something to sit with, to study, to absorb, to interpret, and to express onto the canvas. The forest in many ways can speak to you once you're in the forest. It can make you want to try something new. It's almost like your senses are heightened as you move through. In my case, I had a number of animals and birds around me going through the bushes at times. I even had the family of deer that crossed my path. And when I was standing on this hill, on this particular part of the Innsbruck forest that I chose to paint, as dusk started to come about, I remember thinking in the back of my mind, for some reason, the thought of wolves entered. And there was a point where I actually started to look around me. It was just me and nature and whatever wildlife was out there. And the light started to diminish towards the end of my painting study. And I don't know why, but for some reason I felt like I was being watched. I was being watched by some form of life. And wolf was the animal that was in my mind. I remember looking around a few times, I couldn't see anything. And I did what I could, the best that I could, with the light that I had, until there was a point where I could no longer see the colour mixes that I was mixing. And even the light on my watercolour pad was fading rapidly. At that point, I decided to start packing everything away. Got down the hill and back onto the path. And then I started making my way back down into Innsbruck town. But I think being present in the forest alone, it can give you so much in terms of having a sense of urgency, your ability to focus, your senses are heightened. There's no distraction apart from nature itself, unless, of course, you allow yourself to be distracted by your phone. But even then, where I was, there was no signal. The forest was the signal. It was the connection between myself and the natural world. And that is exactly what I was transferring onto paper. There's something about painting in the wild that strips away all the pressure. You're not thinking about whether the painting's perfect. You're just in it. The brush moves with instinct. This forest in Innsbruck might not be any art curriculum, but for me, it was the best art school I've ever known. It taught me to observe again, to slow down. Back in the studio, I tried to hold onto that feeling, to paint from a place of presence, not pressure. I used watercolour and gouache for their immediacy. You can't fuss over every stroke. You commit, you learn. The forest reminded me that the best paintings aren't just technical, they're honest, they hold a memory, they feel like a place you lived in, not just copied. If you ever feel stuck in your painting practice, take your kit, get out into the woods and just paint. The mistakes don't matter, the mud under your boots does. I thought this painting would be about a place, but really it was about how that place made me feel. And that's something I'll keep chasing. When I started this painting, I was more than 1,000 kilometers from home. I'd never been to this forest before, and it was my first stop and visit in Austria. I had never seen the colours of Austrian autumn in person, never heard the sound of the wind through those trees, or how quiet it gets the moment you stop walking. I went out looking for a place to paint, but what I found was something deeper. Being out there, surrounded by nature, something shifted. It's easy to get caught in routines, studio comfort, familiar subjects, a workflow that works. But adventure, real physical adventure, reminds you why you fell in love with this in the first place. Every time I leave the country with a sketchbook or travel kit, I returned changed. More curious, often invigorated and inspired, less focused on perfection. And this forest, it changed how I see painting. I used to think I had to capture everything, every tree, every shadow, every single leaf, but nature doesn't ask that of you. It invites you to respond, to feel your way through it. That's the gift of plein air. You have to decide what matters. What do you want to matter? What is the painting about? What to leave in, what to leave out, what to honour, what to let go of. You have a limited amount of time. Painting out there made me stop trying to control the outcome. It reminded me the best paintings are often the ones that breathe, where your brush just follows your intuition. That first day in the forest, I didn't even paint. I just walked, looked, breathed, and let myself feel overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. And I think there's a lesson in that. Not every moment has to be productive to be profound. Sometimes your best work begins long before you open your sketchbook. Back home in the studio, I've tried to hold on to that feeling, not rushing, not forcing, letting the memory of that place guide the brush. The sounds of the forest are gone now, replaced by the sound of magpies, pigeons, and lots of seagulls. But the painting still carries the rhythm of that forest. The colour choices, the shadows, the atmosphere, they're all reminders. Reminders of why I travel, why I paint, and why I'll keep going out into the world, finding new paths to walk, and new places to stop, breathe, and make something. The experience of being alone in nature, with your brush in hand, paints, easel, and tripod ready, strips everything right down. You forget about algorithms, likes, finished portfolios. It's just you, your materials, and the question, what do I really see here? The longer I paint, the more I realise nature isn't just a subject, but it's also a teacher. It doesn't rush, it doesn't apologise, it just is. And if you're patient, if you really slow down enough, it starts to show you things you'd normally miss, especially if you're walking around with your head down. Little shifts in light, how shadows can lean at different times of day, that a grey sky isn't really grey, it's full of violet, blue and warmth if you know how to look for it. This forest taught me how to pay attention again. Like every single time I go out into the world and into nature, I get the similar lessons. A constant reminder, and that kind of attention changes how you paint. I used to plan everything. I wanted structure, clarity, certainty. But this experience reminded me the most powerful part of art is often what's unplanned. The accidental mark. That brushstroke that breaks the form but adds life. Happy accidents, as some artists call it. Out there I had to surrender that control. Yes, I have my fundamentals in place and I know the structure, the basic techniques of how to get things down. But the wind moved my paper, the light was constantly changing, and the raindrops started to fall on my watercolour paper canvas and onto my palette. And as I realised, painting isn't always about capturing a scene. Sometimes it's about capturing a moment of being alive. When you look back on that painting that you created on location, you're reminded of the details of how it was to be there. Much more than a single photograph can. Travel does that too. When you're far from home, you see differently. Not because the place is better, but because you become more present. You stop sleepwalking through your habits. You notice the way light bounces off a stone wall, or how colours shift in alpine air compared to the soft haze of England during autumn and winter. It makes you wonder how much beauty you've walked past at home without seeing it. And that's what I'm carrying forward into my work. This forest changed how I approach a blank page, not with any anxiety or expectation, but with curiosity. What wants to happen here? What feeling am I pursuing? Some days it's just about making marks, letting the brush dance. Other days it's about wrestling a memory or a vision onto paper, trying to get it right, and all are valid. Painting this piece, finishing it here in my studio, it felt like honouring a journey, completing it. The physical journey from Innsbruck to Brighton, and the inner one from what should I paint to what do I feel right now and how do I even see it. That shift, that's what travel painting has given me. At least that's just part of it. Not just new landscapes, but new ways of seeing. And honestly, I think that's why I'll keep doing this. Keep seeking out new paths, new countries, new air. Because every time I do, I return home a slightly different artist. So where's next? Honestly, I don't know. I have a few places in mind for this year, but at the moment I am staying in my hometown and focusing on growing my art business here and developing my skills. But there will be many more journeys ahead. Back to my actual painting. You probably have noticed that recently in the time lapse of my painting, I've removed the artist tape, which was around the painting itself. I think at that moment I was considering calling it finished, but with the tape removed and revealing that clean white border, it gave me a fresh perspective and look on the painting, and I decided to paint in some further details, of course. Before this stage, I had been adding thicker and more opaque paint strokes onto the tree's leaves and thicker patches of grass around the tree trunk, and painting in some of the most saturated colours close to the focal point, which is this central tree trunk that catches a little bit of the light from the sky before it gets dark. I usually place my thickest paint strokes, have the strongest level of contrast, and have my most saturated colours on and around my focal point areas with each painting. This is where you want to direct the eye to first. As a first read, it's the main part of the story you're telling with each image, the main character, or what the painting is all about. I then proceed to add some cooler, reflective skylight onto the tops of the leaves and on some of the blades of grass in the foreground. Finally, I add some more warm and cool strokes of thick, opaque colour to the painting before finally calling it finished. This painting taught me a lot about focus, subtlety, and knowing when to push and when to let go. If you want to go deeper in your own art journey, whether that's selling your work, improving your painting process, or building a creative life that actually works, I now offer one-on-one art coaching. You can book a completely free 15-minute discovery call with me, just to chat to see if I can help you improve your art, grow your art business and income. I'll leave the link in the description. And of course, if you'd like to collect this piece, the original and fine art prints are also available on my site. Thanks for being here, and I hope this gave you something to take into your own sketchbook, your studio, or your next adventure.